Hi, Barry Eaton here, and welcome to Radio Out There. Now for my regular listeners, you may remember a couple of weeks ago I played an interview with Joe McQuillen that I had recorded, several years ago now, talking about his son Christopher on the other side. That was just to set the scene because it was an old one. But now Joe is back. He has a follow-up book called We're Not Done Yet, Pop, and we're going to talk more about contacting our loved ones on the other side. Joe McQuillen coming up this week on Radio Out There. Joe, it is wonderful to see you once again. How are you?
I'm doing well, old friend. Thank you. From the other side of the globe, it's so nice to connect with you. You're a special man.
You're used to working on the other side because your first book, which we talked about, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side, and I played the original interview on audio a couple of weeks back, but now you're still there, and people should listen to that one if they don't already know. But Christopher is on the other side after a terrible situation back in 2016. So now your son Christopher is around you all the time. That's
all the
fantastic.
time, all the time, Bear. You know, I feel him around me, and I know when he's around family, and we still connect at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, and our 3 a.m. sessions as we have since 2017, the anniversary. And I feel him around me all the time, and I seek his guidance.
Now, interesting you should say that 3 a.m. because that I have had downloads, which I've talked about in a couple of my books, and from not only people on the other side, but from all sorts of guides and spirits and all sorts of things, because they told me the energy is the lowest at that time. Everything's quiet, so they come through. And I've had some amazing experiences. So 3 a.m. is a wonderful time. So you have already found that for yourself.
Well, and at first, Barry, when he first started coming through, which he started on the anniversary of his crossing over, January 3rd, 2016 is when he crossed, and January 3rd, 2017 is when I first got a download from him. And I visited some wonderful mediums and connected with him, but he came through to me directly during a meditation at 3 a.m. And I had started getting up around that time, and it made me feel closer to him. And I thought that was because that was the time he had crossed, Barry. But subsequently, I found out that that's just when the energy is right for us to connect. Kind of, you know, when you'd walk out on your deck to get cell phone service, you know, and so it's clearer then that he'll reach out to me. Wake me up. I'll sit up straight in a sleep when I know it's time to visit. And I'll go into this office that used to be his bedroom, and I'll start getting downloads.
Right. So he has stayed with you all this time, almost 10 years now since he passed.
Yeah.
So that's a long time because a lot of people have that contact for a year or two. I had a late partner who passed away. She inspired me and urged me to write my books on the afterlife, but she's moved on now. And
Really?
happens a lot. But Christopher has stayed with you all this time.
You know, I think when I was finishing up the very first book, I was feeling a little melancholy, which is, you know, a very Irish term, right? I was feeling a bit melancholy because I was afraid that the end of that book would mean the end of our direct connection. And he came through and he said, "We're not," this is the ergo of the title, "We're not done yet, Pop. I'll be with you until you cross," you know. So I knew then that was the mission that I'm supposed to do, was to carry his message. Sally and I were down by Siesta Key a number of years back, and she was listening to a guided meditation of Rebecca Rosen's, and she was quoting the Course in Miracles. And I had heard her, just overheard it as I walked by, and I heard her said, you know, you have only one purpose. You have only one great purpose. That's the one God gave you. And it really, and that was a number of years after Christopher had transitioned, but I realized that's why I'm here. That's why Chris connects with me, because my purpose is to connect with parents who've lost children
Mm,
or people who've lost somebody significant. It doesn't have to be a child. And some of us who've lost children think it's, that our grief is deeper than anybody else's, but your grief is as deep as your grief is,
mm,
And so it was only then that I realized why. And I had from a big Irish family and lost half of our siblings just through attrition and a few other things. But it was why God kept me alive and intact, all these years. I'm 39 years sober, Bear, because I was a pretty wild young man, and I at 28 years old, I was able to find sobriety and ergo find God. And I think I was prepared for what happened all those years later, because of that connection. So it
mm.
was only at that moment, walking by that room, that I realized why God had kept me, because he had work for me to do,
That's
and
right.
it's to
That's your
connect with
mission. That's
people.
your life challenge. Yeah, that's right. Now,
That's
can
my
I pick you
mission.
up on something? I just wanted to discuss it with you.
Sure.
You mentioned Chris transitioning. And a lot of people say that now. People talk past over. And then after that, you talked about a lot of people have lost people. Now, I was told from my people on the other side when I was having my downloads to write my books on afterlife that no, we don't lose anybody.
Yeah.
They're always there. So I think that's part of the healing process is don't talk about I lost somebody because they are there. And if you're able to contact them, and they will, and if you want to, you can, but don't talk about loss because it isn't as if they've disappeared into some horrible, universal, vast black hole somewhere. No.
Yeah, I think you're dead right, and I stand corrected because I do. I think there's a wonderful John St. Augustine's a wonderful author and radio uh, 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 producer and talk show host, and he had talked about you know people on the other side are on the other side of the window waiting for you to look out,
Mm,
waiting for those to connect because but I think what's important, I remember early on speaking at a big group with a friend of mine who was kind of the Pied Piper of the metaphysical here in the North Shore. And the woman was a little miffed that her twin sister hadn't connected with her. And I said, what have you done to enhance the connection? In my case, it's getting up at 3 o'clock. It's going
mm,
into a guided meditation. It's aligning my chakras. And in those moments, I feel him like I do right now with a tingling around the neck where I know that he is, he's always around, but I know that he's really present next to me, in those moments.
mm,
And I think, you have to be able to do your part to make that cell connection to the one that the loved one that you're
mm.
trying to connect with. I find that some guided meditations are to reach the other side or reach a loved one are very helpful to
Mm.
get you in that mindset
Yeah, that's
that'll
very
allow
true.
you to connect.
Mm. Now, Joe, I've just had an image come through. Um, did Christopher play or was interested in a guitar or some other string kind of instrument?
It's funny, he did,
Uh-huh.
and
Because that is the
and
image he is standing right now saying, I am
well,
here with both of you.
and I'll send you that subsequently. A very dear friend of mine who's a musician, pretty well known at the time, and we're very close friends. And we've written a number of songs, and he's got a wonderful voice and recorded,
Hmm.
and and all in regarding to Christopher. The first one we did is "Take Care of My Baby," which was based on Sally's. When what she spoke after during Christopher's funeral, and then we've written "I'll Send You Feathers," we've written That's Grief and Love. So he's a brilliant musician, and we write music and songs together. And and I'll send you this after we hang up. I'll email you some of those.
All right.
But I think it's
Fantastic.
a real connection to Chris that he loves music.
Uh-huh.
He learned a little bit to play guitar and never stayed with it, but he connected very much like me to music.
Okay, well, he's now playing the guitar a lot more on
I
the other
bet.
side, okay? And that is the image he sent through. I had no idea about his uh, proclivities in that area. But anyway, just getting back to about people saying, oh, nobody ever contacts me. Now, there are many, many different ways I found, and I was told about this, so I put them in my books, that first of all, most people have a dream at some stage. They might not be able to meet them at 3 a.m., but they have a dream. I
Yeah.
had a dream about my father. I was in Tahiti at the time. He came through in a dream. Various other, and other people say, oh, yes, I dreamt about them. That is the first way that most people are contacted. But there are so many other ways, aren't there? I mean, you've used mediums, plenty of mediums.
Right. I've used some wonderful, and some have become friends now. Wonderful mediums, and I've wanted to visualize Christopher and see him. It's only happened
Hmm.
going on, 9 years of us connecting directly. Maybe twice that I've been able to see him. I learn better audibly. I'm better audibly, so he comes to me that way.
Hmm.
And people will say to me, can you ask him this? And when we do our 3 a.m. downloads, it's him sending me messages, and I'm transcribing what he's
Yeah.
telling me. It's not a dialogue back and forth. It's me, in cursive, writing down dictating what he's telling me.
Right.
And as opposed to the first book, what's happened after that is a lot of what he tells me is lessons to share with other people. He'll say things like, tell them, Pop,
Hmm.
meaning, to tell people. I've been fortunate enough to speak at Helping Parents Heal and done some Zooms with them as well. And that's the kind of audience that he wants me to connect with, is the people that are hungering for that connection. And a lot of what he's doing now and at this point in time is lessons,
Mm.
telling me to tell them, and them meaning anybody
Right.
who's had loss, and about that certain things like that, nothing that they've done has been lost. The birthday parties, the pony rides, the fishing trips,
Mm.
the walks around the block. None of those moments are lost to the ones we love on the other side. He said it engulfs them like warm air, that they can feel that love and all the other things that, especially parents, well, spouses too, bear,
Mm.
that we beat ourselves up for those small indiscretions or the misstep or in my case, yelling at them, and you regret that. And he said, those are
Right.
gone, Pop. Just let those
That's
go.
right.
All we remember is the love.
And that is the key word. It's the key to the universe, love. And the more we
Yeah.
can embrace it, not only loving other people, but also loving ourselves because of the silly things we do, the horrible things we do sometimes, but we
Yeah.
just have to love ourselves. And
Yeah.
at the moment, there is so much hate and division and whatever in the world. That is not going to go away until we embrace love. And I think Chris and so many
Yeah.
other people coming through from the other side are trying to help us understand that very basic thing.
I don't know if we've gotten wiser, you and me, because as we gotten older,
I hope
or just
so.
more of our connection. He told me not that long ago, and he said, it's all about love and service, Pop. The rest
Yeah,
is just bullshit. That's what he told me. He said the rest is just bull. It's
that's
all
right.
about love
It's
and
bullshit for
service.
sure.
And I do, and I live my life two ways, Barry, which is, it's not that I was a pirate, but I was more selfish and self-centered, and since I've been on this path, I live my life two ways: to please my God and to make my son proud. And if I live that way, you know, I know I'm going to be okay, and I know I'm pleasing him, and and I know that he's used the term the source,
Mm.
God. I'm not a very religious guy, but I'm a very spiritual guy, and I believe very strongly that where this wasn't a big mistake, and as a friend of mine refers to this as Earth School, right? We're here
Mm.
on Earth School, then we
Yeah,
return home to the other realm,
that's
and
right.
and
This is not
and
home.
no,
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 no way.
no. We're running around in this meat suit. That's not who we are. But
I
it took a
like that.
while
A
for me to
meat
get
suit.
there. A meat suit, yeah. And and I know that I'll see him again, Bear.
Of course you will.
And so we talk about connecting. Mine's Audible. I would love to see him more. His third grade teacher was a woman named Miss B, and she used to say to him, "You get what you get, and you don't get upset."
Mm. Mm.
And occasionally I'll have dreams, but I don't recall them as much as I would like to once I wake up.
Yeah.
But I had a dream just 2 nights ago about my niece who transitioned a few years ahead of him. She had an aneurysm, and we were all very close. And her son, we just saw at my daughter got married 3 weeks ago or a month ago, and we saw him there, and she's been on my mind and in my spirit. So I think she came to visit,
Mm.
and it was strange. It was like, Carrie, what are you doing here? And it was, I think her dropping by just to say hello to Uncle Joey,
Well,
and so I'll take what they give me if it's audible, if it's through a medium,
it's there.
if
I
it's,
was about to say
yeah,
mediums are wonderful as well. Now, I trained as a medium and uh,
I'm not
and
surprised.
and work and whatever, but I love going to spiritual churches. I'm a member of a spiritual church, and I have some friends who are fantastic mediums, and
Yeah,
they bring through people. I mean, one in particular brings my father through the whole time, and another one that I'm very close to, she brings all sorts of people through for me. But they bring people through that I may not be in direct contact with, but they are, that's why we call them a medium, they're in the middle. So you have been to quite a few mediums, haven't you? There's one
yes.
in particular, I've written her name down here. Um, what's her name? Blah, 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 blah.
Is it Sherry Jewel?
Sherry Jewell, yeah.
Yeah, we're friends. And you know what, Sherry? Sherry cracks me up. Brash, funny, emotional, but completely full of love. And Chris and a mother type figure. She had young kids. Her son was my youngest son, Will's age, and they knew each other a bit through groups of other friends. But she was that mom, right,
Mm,
on this side with her. And so Chris is, completely free with Sherry. He comes through all the time with Sherry. She just, can't help it. But, she'll say, we've spoken so often, there are very few times that there's something that will really surprise me. But so then she always comes up with one, something out of the blue. I was at my sister's house, and she's in heaven. She was Christopher's godmother, and I've written in the third book a wonderful chapter about her, and she transitioned in February of 2019, and she was a huge source of love for me. And I just happened, I was there spending the month. I would rent her house from her kids. And she said, "Oh, yeah, Chris." She goes, "Oh my God, are you in Marcia's house?" I said, "Yeah." And she went through a litany of things that nobody named, names of taverns, of bars, of an event when we ran away, and
mm,
and and just and here's a great story. So I had come back. We had gone to Siesta Key, which is a thin place, for Chris and I. It's a barrier island off of Sarasota, and I had gotten back, and when I had left, I had put the keys under the mat so that the caretaker, would come in and keep, straighten up the house and
mm.
do what his tasks were. And so I put the key under the mat. And so Marcia came through and said to Carrie, to Sherry, "Now I'm on a cell phone. We're not Zooming. We're not looking. I'm on a cell phone with her." And Marcia said, "Where's the keys?" So I went under the mat and they weren't there. And so she said, Marcia said, don't get locked out. So I went and there was some master keys on a hook, by the door in the corner. So I went and picked up the master keys and put them in my pocket. Walked back out on the deck, and Marcia said, "Put the keys back on the hook, will you?" And she said, and when I come back, I brought back a seashell, which I tend to do, and seashells are very important.
Mm.
The Gulf is a very thin place for Chris and I, and so we had gone to we were on Siesta Key, and we picked up a perfectly imperfect shell, and I put it on top of a picture of a cardinal that I had sent Marcia years ago. I have the same cardinal picture. And Sherry said, Marcia said she likes the shell you sent her, and that it's on top of the cardinal picture. And I went back and son of a gun if it was there. And she said, it's near the picture of the family from so many years ago. And there was a picture from the family in 1963 when all 10 kids were together. And it was, you can't make that up.
No, you haven't made it up. No.
You can't make that up. And that was the evidentiary part of an evidentiary medium.
Yes, for
It
sure.
was Chris sending evidence that he and Marcia were chatting it up with me that day.
Yeah. I know the other way that Chris contacts you, and red cardinals. Now, I'm in Australia. We don't know what a cardinal is. We think they're in Rome and in some conclave or something. But red cardinals are a link that you understand. That's a tattoo. You had a tattoo put on your arm. Tell me about the.
It sure is a tattoo.
Tell me about the red cardinal and some of the ways that he has contacted you in this way. The red cardinal, by the way, is a bird, right? Hello?
We lost the connection for a bit, but we're back.
Right. So red cardinals are birds, right? So tell me about
Yes.
the link that Chris uses here to contact you or let you know he's around.
Yeah, the cardinal is he had gone to school at something called In Balance Ranch Academy in Huachuca, Arizona, south of Tombstone or south of Tucson, and one of his spiritual mentors out there, teacher, was an American Indian indigenous fella, and he said, Christopher sends you red birds. And so he sends his mom hawks. He sends me cardinals. I'll tell you a story that I was feeling a little sad, and a friend of his from the ranch, or the kid that that knew him at the ranch, was coming home to Chicago for a family visit, and asked if he and I could go to an AA meeting together, and that I could, kind of reinforce it, and maybe we go to Christopher's grave and visit. And I thought, absolutely. So on the weekends, I bring Sally a Starbucks coffee. I go through the drive-through. It's kind of my love language, right? It's, instead of having it delivered, I go pick it up for her. And I'm up early, so I'm happy to do it. And so I was going to get her coffee, drop it off, pick up this kid, go to the grave, then go to a meeting. Then I was going to golf later on in the day. So I'm listening to a podcast where a friend of Christopher's girlfriend in his youth was talking about how she would he would sing her the song He Went to Paris, which is a Jimmy Buffett song. Well, that song all of a sudden was on the radio, and I'm feeling a little melancholy and starting to weep a little bit, and I hear tap 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 tap, and I look over on my Jeep, and on the passenger side mirror there's a cardinal, and it's sitting on the mirror, and it's tapping on the passenger side window. And it was like, okay, buddy, I get it. I'm sad, but I know you're here. So let's just shake it off and do a little service for your friend. And we did. But, that's the kind of thing where you just say, how about that? He sent me an undeniable sign. And for me, it's cardinals. To this day, it's cardinals.
That's
When
right.
I'm feeling sad, sometimes I'll ask him to send me a cardinal.
And it happens, and that is wonderful. I mean, some people get other signs. They might have a bird of another description. They might have an owl, or just a I had a feather at one stage after my partner passed away, and I had to move, and all of a sudden, a white. For those people on audio, Joe just held up a lovely white feather. Now, I used to find them on my doorstep,
You
knowing.
know, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying knowing that they were sent there deliberately. It wasn't some cockroach who was saying, "Oh, I get rid of this feather." No, 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 no. That was a message. There are so many different ways they contact us.
Christopher sent Andrew Anderson, who is a medium that's become a friend over the years, and Chris likes Andrew, and Andrew was riding on on a treadmill, and Chris came through. It was running next to him, and Andrew said, "Chris, this is my personal time. I appreciate you come back later." And Chris said, "No, this is a good time." And he sent Andrew a poem called "I'll Send You Feathers," that Andrew had his daughter transcribe on the headset while he was running and sent it to me. And then this Brad Nye, the musician friend of mine, wrote a song called "I'll Send You Feathers." And I'll send you that after we get off. I'll send you the link to it. And it literally is, Chris is committed to the fact that he'll send me feathers until we're together again.
Oh, that's fantastic. But you have had such wonderful communication with Chris, and he's around you, and you talked together at one stage, or he mentioned you are twin souls. Now, that is
Yeah.
not surprising. And a twin soul, for those people who may or may not know it, is you both have the same soul, sort of cut down the middle, if you like.
Right. And
That's a very basic way of looking at it. Yeah.
the candle is, I always have a two wick, because I refer to it as twin flames, I don't, I believe in soul families. I'm not a big soulmate. I think that's Hallmark, even though I think, we're destined to travel. I've been married to Christopher's mom, for 34 years, and a complete commitment to each other. But I think Chris and I share the same soul,
Mhm.
and I know I did Barry. One of the most incredible things I did this last year was with Sue Frederick, who's wonderful. I met at Helping Parents Heal, and she was interviewing me.
Tell us who Sue Frederick is.
And she's a numerologist,
Uh-huh.
and she's a past life regressionist, and so she asked me. She's wanted to interview me for her show, and we had met at Helping Parents Heal. And then she said, "Well, what does Christopher want you to do now?" I said, "Well, he wants me to expand, and he wants me to do a past life." She goes, "Regression." She goes, "I'm a past life regressionist. That's what I do." So later on that week, we did a past life regression. And, what finally dawned on me, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, Bear, is that through this past life regression, in this past life, Christopher was my little brother. My sister Marcia was my mother. So, and it was an amazing, if any of the audience, Sue Frederick is amazing, and I would be happy to share her information with you. And she's had one. I wrote a blurb for her, one of her books, and she's brilliant like you, and intuitive. And we did this amazing past life regression. And what it became apparent to me is that what we go through soul family is kind of like a traveling troupe of thespians, of actors, right?
That's right.
So that we're in the same cast of characters, but we play different roles. So in this role, my sister was my mom, I was the son, and Christopher was my little brother. And in other situations, we're in different roles, the same souls playing different characters.
To have different experiences. That's the most important thing.
Yes, yes. Having different experiences.
Yeah.
And hopefully, as I'm committed to doing in this go round, right? Learn from those and grow from those and evolve. I'm not the same guy. There's a wonderful quote from Hakuri Murakami. And it's, "Once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. One thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in." That's what storms are all about.
That's Ennio Morricone, right?
Murakami, exactly.
Yeah, he's fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, but that's it, is that we're given these storms so that our souls evolve, right? What a shame to go through losing, at least on this side,
Mm.
um, having a tragic accident cause my son to transition and not learn and change from it, right? And be the same old soul that I was before this started. And I'm not. I've evolved. I've changed. I'm a different guy.
I would hope so. I would hope so. Now, one of the things you talk about in your second book, which we're talking about now, we're not done yet. Pop, by the way, that's the name
Yeah.
of the book. Um, one of the things you talk about, and I found that very interesting, there are various thin places. Now, I know you go
Yeah.
to Chris's grave, but there are various other thin places. Now, I've written books about past lives and whatever, and there is that veil that drops when we come into each lifetime. We can't remember everything from all our past lives. We go absolutely mad. It's hard not trying to deal with this one as it is. But those thin places will vary
Right.
for people. And once you can find them, that is where you can contact and be contacted by those from the other side of the veil. Tell me a bit
I think
more about that.
I love the term thin places, and there's a
Mm,
Celtic saying that heaven and earth are only 3 feet apart, but in these thin places, the distance is even smaller.
yeah,
So, the veil is so thin and thin places, and I tell people, find your own thin places.
yeah.
The grave is a thin place for Chris and I. I still want that to be the most stand-up grave in Sacred Heart Cemetery, and we go there and the wind. I do a weed whacker and blow the grass off and keep it neat and polish the stones. And friends drop off things, little stones and
Mm,
and little mementos for the grave. And I get there, I just feel. And now, just so your audience knows, I don't think Christopher lives in his grave. Christopher's at the other side, but that's a great place for him and I to visit, right?
it's a meeting
Um,
place.
it's a meeting place. It's a convenient meeting place where the veil is thin so that
Yeah.
the connection is strong. The Gulf Coast, I don't know, Bear, but I think it has to do with the past life. But we're very, on the Barrier Islands, even the Naples Beach, the Siesta Key Beach, those the Lido Key, the energy is so conducive to connecting
Mm,
that Chris and I, it's almost instantaneous. I put my butt in the sand, I put my feet in the sand, and I feel an engulfing of spirit around me. It's kind of like just feeling this warmth bathe you,
mm,
and I know that I'm in direct connection with my son. There's a lot of thin places. I went to Sedona expecting it to be a thin place for me, and I thought it was interesting and fine. And I think there is real energy there, but it didn't connect with me the way I expected to.
right.
And then that same year, I showed up at Lilydale, which is the oldest spiritualist community in the country. It's literally 45 minutes from where I grew up, having not knowing that, right? And having showed up there. And I was at 3 o'clock in the morning, I walked through into this where they have this stump where the speakers always used to speak,
Mhm.
inspiration stump. I went through there, and the electricity that I felt was like somebody had hit me with a taser. That's how strong that was. So I'm always open to what the thin place is. I spoke at Helping Parents Heal a few years ago at their international conference. I was honored to be part of that, and it was in the desert, and Chris has a connection to the desert. I have a sculpture behind his grave that's a coyote howling at the moon, a wolf howling at the moon. I mean, and the desert calls to him. So my guess is those are all connected to previous lives. That at some point the desert had that, and I think it's a spiritual place. The sea did. So I'll tell your people, seek them out. And your thin place is probably not going to be mine. This room was Christopher's bedroom, and this is a thin place. This is
Mm,
where, I don't lay in bed at 3 a.m. I don't go out on the deck at 3 a.m. I come in here and I connect with him.
mm,
And I think it's where the cell reception is best to the other side, and it's those personal loving spots that hold it for you. I have the picture of the third book is the cover of the third book is a picture of him when he was maybe 5, standing on Naples Beach, just staring out off at the waves. And my nephew sent me that a number of years ago, and it was like, oh my God, that's it. We connect on the beaches of the Gulf Coast. Why? I don't know, but I'll know eventually, but I'm not really sure now, but I do know they're thin places for me,
Yeah,
and they're
that's
very
right.
important. Yeah.
But you have not only connected with Chris, but also other members of your family on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
important because some people might say, oh, all I want to do is talk to whoever it is, my partner, my wife, my lover, my father, mother, grandmother, whatever. But they're all there and they're all ready to come through. So opening that up, that's a wonderful experience for you.
Well, and I think that has a lot that reinforced what soul families meant to me. I'll tell you a wonderful lesson, and it's all lessons for me, Barry, is that when Chris said, when my sister Marcia, as I said, that was his godmother, and he loved and trusted her, and she adored him, and and she was a big source of love for me. And when she was transitioning, she said, she used to call me Joey, and she'd say, Joey, honey, you know, you gave me the greatest gift. I read your book, and I'm not afraid to die. This is when she was getting ready to transition. And I was in hospice with her, and I had left a couple of days before she had transitioned over, and her kids were with her literally at the moment, and it was wonderful. And a year later, on my birthday, Sally had set up a medium session with this woman, Jill Nicole, in the western suburbs. And she said, well, your son's here, but there's this woman. And she described Marcia when she was a teacher, when she was in her 30s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, did she call you Joey? And I go, yeah, she did. Because she said, she's saying, Joey, honey, thank you for the greatest gift.
Oh, that's
So
lovely.
when she getting ready to transition, Chris said, don't worry, Pop, I'll be there when she crosses. I promise. And the whole family will be. And after she transitioned, he said, Marcia came, we were all here when Marcia came over. He said, and we were together, and then she had to go somewhere like a spa. And he said, Pop, when she came back, she was younger than when I remembered
Oh,
when I
wow.
was a kid. And what dawned on me was that Marcia had transitioned from cancer. And
Mm-hmm.
so when she crossed, even though the cancer stayed with her body here, some of the trauma crossed with her. And
Mm.
she had to go somewhere. What a wonderful way to put it, like a spa. What woman's not happy going to a spa? And when she came back, so she had to go to some healing place,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then the trauma was released, and she rejoined the family. And she's with Chris all the time. They're together all the time. Mediums tell me.
Mm.
And my dad's with my son all the time. And it all started because of my dad, by the way, back in the time that I was driving up to Wisconsin. And for your listeners, he had 21 years old and was reckless, and they had a bunch of 12, 20, dozen kids their age were celebrating the last day of Christmas vacation and, kicking up their heels and drinking. They jumped in a canoe, in the middle of winter in Wisconsin, half frozen lake, and all 4 of them transitioned. None of them made it back. And so I was going up what I thought was to find him buried. One of the young men whose parents owned the house said, Chris and 3 friends are missing, Mr. McHugh. So I jumped in the Jeep, ran up, and halfway up, I got a call that said it wasn't no longer a search, but a recovery. All 4 had drowned. And the immediate thought came to me that 15 years before, I'd seen a medium kind of on a whim who had talked about my dad being a railroader, and there's a railroad lantern right there on the shelf. And at that point, I realized why I had that meeting 15 years before, and I had put it in my mental file cabinet, was that if Dad was somewhere on the other side and could connect with me, then Christopher's with him, and I just
Oh,
need
well,
to figure that out.
that's for
And
sure.
that started me on the path.
Yeah. Oh, and you're well and truly on there. Now, we have to wrap up in a moment, but
I don't want to.
Pardon me. Well, you choke me up here now. We can have another chat another time. There's no
Oh,
problem
please.
about that. Yeah, no problem. But let me ask you about, you said you were working on your third book. So
Yes.
what are you bringing from all of this experience over nearly 10 years now for your
Yeah.
third book?
Well, the second book was probably the big highlight of that was the thin places, and I think this one has a lot to do with uh, past lives, and this has to do with the experiences that we can experience here to connect there. He told me one time, Barry. He said, "When you cross, Pop." He said it was a learning curve when I crossed because I was kind of shocked about it all. When you cross, because of the knowledge of what we've had and that connection we've had, it'll be like crossing a stream walking through the woods. He said, I can't bring you across, Pop, but I'm there the minute you step over. So for me, there's a lot about, I'm rounding third base, right? I've had a life beyond my wildest dreams. I'm fortunate. I'm loved. I have a wonderful life, and my daughter got married. My son is doing well with Christopher's guidance. And my bride is amazing. She just wrote her first book called Reaching for Beautiful. So that's on Amazon. It's called The Raising and Losing of a Wild Child.
Oh, love it.
Oh, it's on Amazon. I'm going to plug her book because
All right.
it's a brilliant book. And
All right. Well, tell
she
her to
shares,
contact me and send me some details about the book.
I will.
We can do. Yeah, do that.
I will do that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's all about learning lessons, preparing for a guy who's the last lap around the track. And I'm not ready to go tomorrow, right? But if God touched me on the shoulder and says it's time to go, I'm okay. I've lived a life beyond my wildest dream, but I also know what's next. So a lot of what I'm doing is learning about the preparation of what happens next. What happens for my soul? What do I do? Who do I connect with? What is it like on the other side? What's the soul family
Good.
all about?
Good.
And that's what the third book is. A lot of memories, a lot of stories, of course. But once again, it's just full of lessons, that are passed through me. They don't originate with me, trust me. They pass through me.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful way to wrap up what we're talking about here at the present time. Now, if people want to contact you, find out about your books, from memory, your contact is joemcquillen.net, is that right?
joemcquillen.net. Also, jbmcquillen@gmail.com. If anybody wants to contact, this is literally, Barry, is what God wants me to do. So I get back to every single person who connects with a question. Somebody just connected from India, and their beloved mother had transitioned and wanted to know how she connected. And I sent steps to connect, which I do, and I sent a chakra chart, which is funny, with brush cut and kind of a bent nose. I wear mala beads. I've got a sacred cardinal on my, and I have brush cut, and I spend a good part of my time dealing with the metaphysical, because I know that's where we're all going.
That's
and a
what
lot
it's
of
all
our
about.
loved ones are there. Yeah.
Joe, wonderful to catch up with you. We will talk again very soon. And
Please.
The name of the book that you have, your second book, is We Ain't Done Yet, Pop.
Hey, we're not, Barry. We're not done yet. But as long as I'm here, I'm going to take the lessons he gives you and share it with the people that could use a little comfort and love.
Fantastic. Great to talk to you.
Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure. And you can find out more about Joe McQuillen, on his website, joemcquillen.net, and those two wonderful books. Thanks for your company, and that's it for this week on Radio Out There.